So the on-chain smart contract driven shared is something that is actively being talked about and worked on by you
Yes.
guys. That's
Yes.
that's super cool. That's rad, man.
Well, you're the first one to hear it, so there you go. There's your great
Breaking
there.
news.
Din, 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 din.
Hey friends, Andy here. How you doing? Good to see ya. Boy, do I have an exciting video for you. In this video, I'm going to interview one of the co-founders of Flux, Daniel Keller. If you've paid attention to my channel, you know I'm a big fan of Flux. It is a big part of my portfolio, and it's a big part of my crypto passive income strategy. So I was really stoked to talk to Dan, and I think you will be too if you have any interest whatsoever in Flux and what they are doing in the future. But before I jump into the interview, do me one quick favor and click that Fluxing like button. It helps me out a ton, helps my channel out a ton, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for doing that. You're the best. All right, let's jump into that interview right now. Hello, everybody. Greetings, salutations. I'm excited to make this video. I have got Daniel Keller from Flux on the line to throw some interview questions at him, some questions that you submitted. I'm very excited to have him. How the flux are you doing, Dan?
I'm fluxing amazing. Hey, Andy, thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it. Love your content, man, and love what you do for the space. So thank you for doing that.
Well, I appreciate that. If you watch my channel, you have almost certainly heard of Flux at this point. I have featured it in quite a few of my videos. However, you might not be familiar with Daniel. So, Dan, if you could give like a little short intro to what you do with Flux and how you got connected.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the chief strategy officer and co-founder of the project. Myself, Parker Honeyman, and Tadeusz Comenta. We founded the project about almost 4 years ago, essentially. And we've been kind of working progressively in the space to deliver our decentralized computational network, our multi-asset platform, Zelcore, our the list goes on and we can probably get into that. But yeah, I mean, I've been in crypto for I guess the better part of 10 years ish. On and off, like everyone else, was super involved at the beginning, then kind of got a little disheartened, was out in, and then when we started Flux, then I got really into it. So that's Flux is the only project I work with, and that's my baby.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I first got plugged in, so I'm one of the rare people who mined Flux, or at the time Zell, from launch, founded on Bitcoin Talk. Back when that was a thing, you hopped on there, found the new launches, stuff like that, through some mining rigs and stuff. And I remember there was this mysterious Agent Smith attached to the project, and I was like, "Who
Yeah.
is this guy?" And then later, hi Dan, you're Agent Smith, all that good stuff. So, like, how did you find Flux? Like, how did you get plugged in initially? Like, how did you find the guys you're working with now? Like, what's the connection?
Well, my name is Dan Keller, and I'm a shitcoin miner. I love to mine shitcoins, and
Me too.
not anymore, but back in the day,
Yeah.
that was the thing to do. So
Mhm.
I actually found Zcash initially, and started checking Zcash out, and then that's kind of how Zelcash, which was the first version of Flux, kind of came into existence. We wanted to do things a little bit different, and I met with a great group of guys who had the same ethos and the same vision as I did, and you get an OG tag over
Mm.
in Discord because you've been there from the get go. Because if you
Yeah.
remember me as Agent Smith before we were doxxed, um, you've been there since the beginning. So
Yeah,
that's
man.
awesome, and I'm glad to hear that.
Well, that's cool. So, I mean, tell me a little bit more. Like, what's your background? Like, what before jumping into the world of Flux and going hard on this stuff? Like, what were you doing? Like, what's your professional background? Whatever you're willing to share.
Yeah, no, I mean, I am a chief information officer, strategy officer by trade. That's really what I've been. I've been in technology for 25 plus years. I spent the first part of my career pushing everything to centralized solutions. So when you first, we had servers all over the place, and then we decided, okay, we need to have centralized, server locations. How do we get everything centralized? And then once we got everything centralized and had data centers and data pools and data lakes and all that kind of good stuff, then all of a sudden we're like, hey, maybe we need the cloud. So then I spent another part of my career being one of the first adopters to the cloud platform. And as I was kind of going through that iterative process of moving from hosted self-hosted legacy-based infrastructure over to cloud-based infrastructure, something dawned on me along the way, and that was that the decentralized infrastructure will be the next iteration. And that's how Flux was born. We knew very early on that Web3, it wasn't termed Web3 at that particular point in time. It was decentralized internet, I guess you could say. And we started planning for that 3.5 years ago. So, professionally, it was right in line. Parker is the operations guy. I'm the strategy guy. And Trunk is the technology guy. And then we've got about 35 plus developers on the project that are working at different capacities on different parts of the entire ecosystem. So
dang, I had no idea. 35.
I think it's 30. I think it's 37 as of
wild,
yesterday.
Man. That's wild.
So, yeah, it is
Way to
wild.
Go. So you went from centralized stuff to building cloud stuff, to now building something to dethrone the cloud platforms out there.
Yeah, it's so weird, right? Because many of us in our young careers, right, we want to be in the system. We want to climb the corporate ladder. We want to get up and participate in whatever is going to get us to that next rung. And then when you get to be my age, you're like, how do I destroy this ladder? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want any of this. I want people to be in charge of their data. I want privacy. Yeah. I don't want people deplatformed. I don't want, big tech to rule the world. How do I do that? And that's kind of what gave birth to Flux. And both the co-founders and myself, all three of us all agree, this is the logical next iteration of technology.
Yeah, I love it. So, you have some background in mining and stuff. I know once upon a time you had quite the mining operation. I think you decommissioned that. Are you back into mining? Do you do any mining now? What's your story with mining right now?
So at one particular point, I owned the largest GPU mining facility on the East Coast. So it was huge.
Not know that. That's amazing.
It was big. Yeah. And it actually was hashing Flux, Zelcache back in the day, right at launch. So it was the longer that I went with mining, the more I realized that I enjoyed it. It was fun. I have an addiction, and that is I love to see cards hash. But in the end, it made more sense for me to stand up a node structure and participate that way. One, it's much more powerful. I love the people that are decentralized, but having a centralized entity like that when you're preaching decentralization, probably not the best thing in the world. So, we're still I still mine, but just not at that grand a scale, I would say.
Yeah, it's hard to, if you have the mining in your blood, it's hard to like get out of it completely, I would imagine. The whole idea of running nodes and things of that nature, I think is cool because it's like super accessible for anybody around the world. If you have like a small apartment or you have super expensive electricity or whatever, and mining is not something you can feasibly do, there's other ways you can get involved and support a project and still earn passive, crypto income. I think that's pretty awesome.
It's the nature of decentralization, Andy. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's like, we have people that are coming into our Discord and talking to us all the time. They have one rig with 2 cards somewhere in India that, they're mining enough Flux to pay to live. Like these are real things that, we're kind of spoiled being in this, first world country, but, there are people out there that they depend on the project to be successful because that's a piece of their income, so super, super excited to see those pieces coming together for everyone, really.
That's amazing, man. Like I say it all the time on my Twitter and stuff. It's like the internet, it's like this new era where all of a sudden opportunities, doesn't matter where you are in the world, you have opportunities available to you. It's pretty amazing. So, just had Flux listed on Binance. That was amazing. Everybody got super stoked about that. I am super pumped about extra volume and a whole bunch of new eyeballs and all that. So the inevitable questions, I have gotten several of them. When Moon, when Coinbase, when's the rocket ship going to continue to take off? What do you have to say for yourself?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the community because the community was highly involved in that process. The Binance listing was a 3-year process, like literally 3 years for us to get added to
That's wild.
Binance. People really take for granted, and I don't praise centralized exchanges very often, but the due diligence process that Binance did to get us to that point, they do a lot of things that I don't care for, but that's one thing they did really, really well. They wanted to make sure that what they were launching was exactly what we had intended it to be and what we were saying we are. And yeah, it was exciting to see it happen. It was kind of a dream come true for myself and for the team because we worked so hard to make that happen. So, and I would say the answer to your question is we're not stopping. You know what I mean? I think this will be a blip in the radar in the grand scheme of things. And, once people really start to understand what Web3 truly can allow you to do and what Flux is doing to allow Web3 to mature, the question will be when Flux. You know what I mean? It's like, because it really is the exposure that Binance brought new players to the space in terms of partnerships and people that they kind of knew about Web3, but then they fell down the Flux rabbit hole and here they are. So, it really has helped us out quite a bit in terms of gaining notoriety. We had multiple articles that were published about. There's another article that's coming out this week that talks about, the future of Web3 and what Flux is doing. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people ask those questions about the next logical exchange listing because they think that's kind of the benchmark we've set in crypto as like success. But in reality, we don't give a shit about those things. Mm-hmm. We care about the project going to the next level where exchange listings are a byproduct. The success of the project is what is really paramount.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, I mean, that's my opinion. I think exchanges are cool. I think it's a great like milestone and stuff like that, but it is definitely not end all be all. Each exchange happens, there's hype around it, the price jumps up a bit and then corrects or whatever, and then it's just back on with normal day-to-day business and stuff. But it's still cool to see, and Binance is huge. Congratulations again on that. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, super awesome.
So we talked about mining a little bit. I know I've had on some of my Flux videos, I've had lots of questions and I've had people reach out to me directly and ask some version of, we've got the parallel assets. Could you kind of explain that a little bit with the mining side, how those are distributed? And then also do sites like What to Mine, do they truly reflect the profitability of Flux?
Well, I'll tell you what, there was a video that was put out today that talks specifically about the actual analysis of What to Mine and the fact that it doesn't necessarily portray the real value of the project because we can only add the assets that will be claimable, not the assets that you're going to add down the road. So I would say this, if we're number one on What to Mine, we're number one with a bullet because the numbers are actually much higher than what most people anticipate. The parallel assets are really, it's kind of unique. That's really what sets us apart from other platforms, because I've been saying since the beginning of this that the holy grail of blockchain is interchain operability. So that's the ability to move from one chain to the next chain seamlessly and be able to participate in their DeFi offerings or their, staking pools or liquidity pools, or, maybe it's an on-chain governance model, whatever it is. And that's kind of what makes Flux unique. As we started out with KDA, then we did Binance Smart Chain, then we did Ethereum, then we did Solana, then we did Tron. Each one of those brings a really unique opportunity to the folks that are in the Flux world, because you can maintain your on-chain Flux asset, or through the process of fusion, you can move to another platform and you can participate in that particular chain. Why was that important? Well, we just saw it with Binance. Binance was able to list us with our parallel assets. That was super important because that was really showcasing the power of this cross-chain functionality. You're going to see a lot more of this. a lot more projects are starting to realize, wait a minute, you guys have the ETH equivalent, or you guys have the Binance Smart Chain equivalent, or the KDA equivalent, which KDA's been taking off quite a bit here recently. And one of the ones that I'm really looking forward is Solana. I really look forward to participating in that ecosystem. I think what we've done with Zelcore, with the Serum DEX and Solana itself and some pieces there, it's super exciting to see what happens there. But yeah, parallel mining is important. You're not just mining Flux when you run a rig. You're mining Flux on the native chain, our blockchain, but you're also earning that on other chains as well. So you're earning Binance KDA, you're earning KDA, you're earning Binance Smart Chain, you're earning these different assets. So
yeah, I will say I've done some swaps and it's very seamless. It's very cool. I am excited about any upcoming assets that are have cheaper gas fees than Ethereum.
Solana,
Solana,
Tron, Solana, Tron are real. Solana is interesting in a lot of different ways for me. I'm not a fan of proof of stake, by the way, but I understand there's value in some of what Solana's doing, and what they're doing in DeFi. They are quietly building a juggernaut, and also with KDA, we're really excited to be able to work with them on different levels, because these guys are sleeping giants. You think what they're doing now is awesome? Just wait and see what they have in store. And Flux is going to be there every step of the way.
Love it. Yeah, I've been very excited that I've been accumulating KDA through my nodes for this past year or so, or whatever. How long ago that was announced? Yeah, it's been a good run. So with the parallel assets, how are those supplied? Is it just adding more to supply cap? Is that the main way this is supplied? And if so, is there a point where you stop extending the cap? Is there? I mean, what are the economics of that? How do y'all think about that?
Well, our economic model is different from everyone else in the fact that we have a fixed cap of 440 million. So they'll never be in existence on the primary chain, or any other chain for that instance, of more than 440 million Flux. If you want to move from the native chain to a parallel chain, so Dan has let's say he has 5,000 Flux that he wants to move to Binance Smart Chain to trade on Binance. I leave the primary chain. That number is no longer available in the primary chain. And then I go to the Binance Smart Chain where it's now available. And then you can bring it back the exact same way. So Fusion allows us that interoperability, that flow between those different things. And right now you can move, you think of this in the grand scheme of things, you can move Flux, the native chain, to any of our parallel chains through Fusion. But expand that out. Imagine having any chain in its primary chain and allowing Fusion to be able to move to parallel chains. It's going to happen. It's going to happen very soon.
Cool.
Yeah, and it kind of changes the game when you think about it, because it starts to open it up to other projects to participate in that process. So we're super excited about what Fusion's becoming.
Yeah. So what is what's the process of deciding the assets you're going to support? Is it just stuff that pops up on the radar and then it goes into a kind of a process of due diligence, kind of research, checking the background of the project, or how is that selection process happening?
Well, we spend a lot of time doing research, and we align ourselves with projects that they have the somewhat similar ethos to us, and they are building infrastructure and a community around the project itself. So we don't add just anything for the sake of adding it. It has to have a real business use case. Solana clearly was a DeFi move, right? Yep. Ethereum was clearly we have to do Ethereum because everybody else is doing Ethereum. Tron, cheap fees, is still developing on the network. Kind of made sense. I like Solana and KDA a little bit better than those other choices, but the ones that we moved to the next parallel assets, we announced Avalanche, which I think is doing some amazing work on their side of the fence and kind of the things that they're putting together, and Dot, so Polkadot. And Polkadot, really what they're doing too with DeFi is kind of game changing. So it's a long process. It's a process where we work with those projects to make sure that it's the right fit for us. We do lots of due diligence. We do lots of stress testing, and we take time and we figure out whether or not, that's something we want to participate in. But one last thing, we have 10 parallel assets that we've identified in our scope of work, but that 10 parallel assets could be 100 parallel assets. It could be 500 parallel assets. As the ecosystem continues to grow and we have the opportunity to work with different projects, we're not limited by anything in our imagination. So we're laying the foundational groundwork, the delivery groundwork for, pretty much any chain that could participate that's a value add.
Cool. Awesome. So a big one that is top of my mind, because I've made several videos talking about Flux nodes, and especially with the price action, those nodes are very profitable. It's been pretty awesome, and with that comes a lot of people who are excited about running a Flux node, and want to jump into it. But even the smallest Cumulus tier, 10,000 Flux required. That's a pricey prospect for a lot of people. So I have a lot of people asking, about this, which y'all have talked about briefly. Smaller nodes, or even shared or community, or like. So, give me some information about maybe whatever you can, whatever is known about what's coming to make it more accessible to more people to get involved with running Flux nodes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really super excited about the halvening. If you're not familiar with what a halvening is, you can look at what Bitcoin does every so many years. It basically halves the block rewards, and we're going to do the same thing with Flux. Not on the primary chain has already done their halvening, and they're on a set schedule. But what we can do with the node structure is we can do halvening on demand, so it's scalable. A lot of times I refer to two different types of scaling. Soft scaling, which is our parallel assets, right? So we put more Flux in the hands of people that want to run infrastructure. That's soft scaling. Hard scaling is when we change the requirements for those computational nodes. So I think what you're going to see is, a halvening for your top tier, a halvening for your mid tier, and then I think your third tier is going to look a lot different. To reduce the barrier of entry for people to come in and participate in the ecosystem. And then on top of that, we've identified the opportunity to, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds because the guys will kill me, but there could be a fourth tier of node that essentially is almost like a playground or a development. So maybe you want to run a Pi or a Jetson, and you want to do it, and reduce the barrier of entry for those folks to participate. You're going to see it. I can't tell you what it looks like, but because we're still in the process of doing the discernment ourselves. But last week of December, there's going to be a presentation about the proposal, and I think it'll be very interesting to see the community's feedback. I think they're going to be super excited.
Cool.
And the other thing you mentioned was about the shared nodes. If you've been in the space long enough, you know about shared nodes, right? Like they are the worst thing and the best thing all in once, right?
Yeah.
But you have to depend on a third party. That's what it comes down to. Dan runs a node and he takes the lockup from 5 or 6 different people. Well, if everybody trusts Dan, and which I am a never trusting soul, right? Because it's a lot of times it's out of the hands of the people that are hacked or compromised, or maybe it was just bad practice what they did and they accidentally got hammered. But the fundamental philosophy behind the shared nodes is actually really good, right? So to reduce the barrier of entry, allow people to participate in a group level, and allow them to run more infrastructure. So Dan has 500 Flux and he wants to participate in a node. Maybe we need 5,000 Flux. Well, now what do I do? Well, I can go to a centralized exchange and I can stake it. We have a exchange you can do that on as well. Or we do an on-chain shared node. So essentially, what we do is a smart contract that's deployed between 10 different people to the node, locks that liquidity up so that they can't move it. They hold their liquidity, so they provide the node keys, and they're locked up for a period of time. So let's hypothetically say it's 3 months or 6 months, whatever it is. And at the end of that expiration of that smart contract, everybody gets their liquidity back and they can do it again. So these are all things that can and will happen. Time frame, I couldn't give you an answer on the time frame. The halvening itself, we're targeting Q1, Q2 of next year.
Cool. So the on-chain smart contract driven shared is something that is actively being talked about and worked on by you
Yes.
guys.
Yes.
That's super cool. That's rad, man.
Well, you're the first one to hear it, so there you go. There's your
Breaking news.
Din, 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 din. Yeah, it's something that we understand as people come into the ecosystem. This is where a lot of projects fail because they reach critical mass, and people can no longer participate in the network because there are whales that hold. Okay, I'll give you for instance. I usually don't talk about projects, but I'll share it. Dash nodes.
That's
I
was just
remember
about to
back.
mention Dash. Yeah.
We would have loved to have been able to participate in that. I mean, there was one point in time where a Dash node was worth, in the excess of $250 million. I mean, or wait a minute, no, $250,000. Now, a million would be crazy, but yeah, I mean, that's where I think a lot of projects fail because you need to have decentralization at your heart. And if Dan runs 5 nodes and Dan is now halved and he has to run 10 nodes, he's going to do that, right? And if we have the ability for new people to come into the ecosystem, and maybe let's say they have the ability to run a node for 100 flux, an entry tier node, and they're like, hey, I can do this. This is simple. I can run this. My goal is to get to the next tier and the next tier and the next tier. Or we have enterprise-based customers coming in and they're like, look, we want to run infrastructure as well. We want to provide, liquidity to run these nodes, but we maybe don't want to run, a full BAMF. Maybe we want to run, half of one, or, maybe we want to be in a shared scenario. So what it really does is it opens us up both on the enterprise side of the infrastructure and the normal guys like us that just want to participate and they want to run and they want to be part of the network.
Yeah.
Decentralization.
I love it. I still call my Stratus nodes BAMFs, by the way.
Yeah, it'll always be a BAMF for me. They made me change it, but deep inside, it's a BAMF.
That's right. So there, we have the nodes as they are. Is there and they're mostly it's I guess they're multi-featured, I guess, and they can be computational. You can do some storage stuff with them. Is there going to be purpose driven ones that like a storage node and computational only? Is that some kind of direction y'all are looking at all?
Now remember, BAMF was broadly available multifunction node, right?
Yeah, that's what it stands for. 100%.
That's what it stands for, right?
PC version.
Yeah. There is going to be in this happening identifying, because we really have some unique use cases now, and each one of them is very specific to what it needs to be able to do on the network. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see your highest tier be your highly available computational piece. I think your mid tier is going to be your mid tier or small business based piece. And I think your lower tier is going to end up being your storage nodes. So, and then you have there'll probably be another tier that's more or less AI learning deployments on, like something like the NVIDIA Jetson for AI, folding at home, proof of useful work pieces. So we're going to see a little bit of all of this in the next iteration. But yeah, I think very specific requirements for each one of those node classes. And the other thing too is another way that we're going to soft scale on top of that is if we need more scalability in a particular area, we need more BAMFs, right? Because we have a high end, maybe Airbnb came on board or whoever, right? We can incentivize those nodes above and beyond what the block reward is by providing resources from the foundation to target exponential growth in one particular area. So we have the block reward, which is your guarantee that if you run a node, you're going to get those. But at some point, if we need more of one particular type of node, we can incentivize people to break those nodes down and go over to the node that's being more incentivized and stand up more infrastructure. So, this goes back us miners, when we did spec mining, right? So, maybe we did 2 or 3 different projects that we said, these guys are up, we'll mine them for a while, but I like these guys, they're down and I'm mining at a loss. Essentially it's kind of the same scenario, moving between these classes of nodes to be able to capitalize on the arbitrage between them. So yeah, I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I can definitely speak for the idea that, um, you know, early in my Flux node journey, running a lesser number of nodes at the time, and also mining Flux has earned me several of my nodes currently. So it's like I love the idea that you can run these things, and if you have a long-term mindset, and if you really believe in the project, you're thinking with that like long time frame, you can kind of build it on top of itself, and then make it even more of a passive income monster, which is pretty rad.
Yeah. Well, you're only limited on Flux by your imagination. And, we're getting ready to announce a couple new partnerships with, platforms through the Flux marketplace that you'll be able to tune up different nodes and make more income. So, I mean, people always ask me about the nodes. They worry about, well, as the block rewards go down, more nodes come online. What does that mean to my income? Well, it means that you're going to have other projects and other things that you run to continue to keep bolstering them. And those nodes become worth even more because they're revenue generation models. I try to compare this, and I was explaining it to my son one time. I said, you think of running a Flux node not as participating in a network, but actually being a business that's built on top of the network, because you are providing your resources, your knowledge, decentralized systems administrator to participate in this network, and you're building a business model around that. So, that's what we're trying to do is we're creating partnerships with our node ops. I mean, it's a wise thing to do.
Yeah, that's great. I've so in my with the various videos I've posted, I have had several people who say some version of uh it's 12,000 or $20,000 to get this node, and it only returns a couple hundred per month. This doesn't seem worth it to me. Break even time is too long. And I just want to take a quick moment to say my two thoughts on that. And I'm sure you would echo these thoughts. One, I don't view this as something. We live this weird time of crypto where there are these node projects where you spend all your collateral to get your node, and then you're required to make back your money. Whereas Flux in the more traditional node model is that you're putting that up for collateral, and you're not actually spending it, still available to you. So there's a big distinction there. But also, what is the Cumulus is like 30% APY or something like that, and that's 30% APY. That's massive. That's huge.
Yeah.
And it's the way to look at it, I think, is if you believe in Flux, if you believe in this project, then you want to invest in it. And so why not just have a node and earn 30% on what you've invested in, and probably earn a lot more than that going forward as things
Yep.
are rocking and stuff like that. But also, it just sounds like there's a lot of opportunities coming up with nodes, to get creative about how you deploy them and what size and how many and what you earn and all kinds of cool stuff like that.
Yeah, and honestly, Andy, I tell everybody in this space, invest in the project, invest in the
Yeah.
people. Don't invest in the speculatory, nature of things. Otherwise, you're just going to get wrecked out there, right? So invest in projects that can produce. I tell everybody when they ask, why should I invest in Flux? Well, I think you start out at our GitHub and you work your way out from that. I mean, people that are committed to developing the project and building the project all the way back through a bear market of 2018, these guys are committed. And I always say it's never about the money to this team. It's about the if you have the mission at heart of what you're setting out to do, money is the byproduct, right? But if you chase the money or chase what it's going to bring to you and don't look at delayed return on investment, you're going to get wrecked. Don't follow green candles. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
invest there. I would say the majority of the people that watched the Binance listing go up and things like that, they weren't selling. The
Yeah.
nodes went up. As a matter of fact, you know what I mean? Because they realize there's more value, more potential than just a price. This is more of a long, like you said, like a long term target.
Yeah, and as somebody who part of my vetting process for when I am considering, throwing some money at a project or whatever, is looking at the GitHub to see commits and stuff like that. If those out there look at the Flux commits and stuff, and then reference some other projects, you might see a big difference. There's a lot of activity going on.
A lot of green. It looks like a damn
Yep,
Christmas tree.
it's beautiful. So
Yeah.
on the partnering with other projects and stuff, I love that. I've really loved. It's been very one profitable to me to for the KDA partnership, but two, it exposed me to Cadena, and I had no idea who they were before, and so I started earning it. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Then I started looking into it, and I actually bought some invested because I thought it was such a cool project. So that's kind of opened a cool door. But I know there's other stuff on the horizon. I know that y'all have talked about Presearch and Firo or Firo. They used to be
Bureau. Yeah.
they who they
Zcoin.
yeah, that's right, Zcoin.
Yep.
So like with those, is that going to be? I don't know how much has been announced about it or what you can say, but are they going to be similar to Cadena in that you stand up a node on your Flux node and you kind of earn based on that? Are they more traditional? You put a collateral of those on the Flux node and run a more traditional node on there. Like what does that look like
Keep your eye on next week. And
next week? All right.
we're in the middle of our 30 on 30, and one of those announcements is going to be specifically around both those projects. We haven't hid the fact that we want to work with Firo. Ruben and those guys over there, we love what they're doing with privacy. Flux itself is not a privacy asset, right? So we took,
Yep.
Although we're a fork of Zcash, we removed ZK snarks, and it's, it's a transparent project. But that doesn't mean that we can't work with projects that are doing privacy better than what we could do. And that's what's unique about Firo is there's lots of opportunities to continue some synergy around working with that interchain operability, working with different platforms to bring those particular pieces in. And as far as Presearch goes, Presearch is a home run. Like
Yep.
I like the team. I like what they're doing. I think that the concept of what they have thought about and how they're rolling these things out is a natural fit for Flux. I always tell everybody, do your own research, and I never give investment advice on anything ever. But I would say that keep a tight eye on the projects we work with because we've done a lot of due diligence and we have to have a lot of trust with these folks to be in this space, which can be very toxic at times. We need to make sure that we really truly believe in the people we're working with. So, I would say those are two that you're going to see some announcements about real soon, and it'll be super exciting.
Cool. Yeah, Firo is one I admittedly don't know a whole lot about. I know I knew of Zcoin, but I definitely want to look into them. Presearch, I was super stoked when I saw that because huge fan of that project. I've got a bunch of pre nodes running. I just think it's a cool their actual like product. The search engine is great. Works awesome. Great interface, and I love that
Yes,
you guys are
sure does.
connected with them. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, they're a good group of guys and gals, and I think that they're going to end up. They give us because they're going to be on this decentralized computational network, and because they have kind of decentralization at the heart. that's really a winner for us.
Big time. One question I got that I was pretty curious about myself, and I know I've heard you talk about this in other interviews and from time to time, and I just don't know where y'all stand on this topic. But proof of useful work, the whole idea of doing something, useful with the hashing and the mining and the chain and all this good stuff. Where is Flux at with that? Is that still on the docket? Like, what is the thoughts for that going forward?
100%. And if you ask me, Andy, what are you most excited about with the project? I would say proof of useful work. Because one of the things that when we set out with Flux was to be able to solve an issue that Satoshi Nakamoto had. And that was the fact he looked at the energy consumption of validating transactions on the network, and it's just idle computational resources. And it's really not good for the environment. It does err on the side of decentralization, but do ASICs really make it decentralized at its nature? And so my solution to that was, MIT, I guess it was about 2 years ago, wrote a thesis specifically around what they believe. They didn't term it proof of useful work, that kind of something that we termed. But they looked at the possibility of a dual algorithm that would lay over top of each other. We kind of know that as dual mining in the mining space, right? So you have two different algorithms that can work on the same infrastructure, right, on the same card, and they're really producing two different transaction validations. So what we're looking at with proof of use work is being able to take and render those GPUs instead of just transactional validation, let them leave the network essentially, continue to be rewarded like they were there, right? And actually deploy for proof of useful work. Maybe it's rendering. Maybe it's, one of the big things that's out there now is these deep fakes. And it takes a ton of computational power to render a deep fake, but it takes even more computational power to prove that it is a deep fake. So, I could see Flux doing that. I could see him working with universities. So instead of universities standing up these massive data centers on site for computational folding or whatever it is, AI rendering, AI integration, I could see our network being another valuable part to taking proof of work and making it exactly that, proof of useful work. So out of all of the things that we're doing, I'm most excited about that. And we're working with about 5 different projects in this space. This isn't you think about it, take a step back and look at it. This goal isn't a Flux goal. Flux is pioneering it, but we want to bring every project that wants to participate in this space and is a proof of work algo. We want them to be launching on that network, right? We want them to utilize it the same. You could see us utilizing. Can you imagine that if Ethereum wasn't going to proof of stake and there was the ability to tie Flux together with Ethereum, together with 2 or 3 other projects that could symbiotically, here comes COVID and we need to fold. Now all these GPUs are dedicated to a central thing, but they're being incentivized on their own networks. I mean, chills, man. I mean, I'm serious. It changes the game. It really does. It changes the game for everyone.
I get super pumped up when I hear you chat about that. I mean, I think it's this incredibly valuable resource. We have, I don't know how many millions of GPUs, deployed around the world currently hashing for all these things. And I truly, I'm a diehard at this point. I don't have quite the background you do, but I'm diehard into crypto. It's changed my life. It is 100% the future, and I believe in proof of work. I believe in mining. I believe in these things. But admittedly, I also understand that it's just using it to hash, these algorithms to crunch these numbers to build these new economic systems. There's so much more potential. There's so much more it could be doing for the world than a digital monetary revolution, which is awesome and amazing, and we need that. But just when you talk about the other possibilities, that's pretty incredible. And so, what do you foresee a marketplace where companies can jump on and say, "Oh, I want to use render time. No, I want to use folding time. Oh no, we're going to change over to this and fill in the blank, medical rendering, calculation, etc."
Yeah, well, we kind of already have pioneered the first iteration of proof of useful work with what we did with our nodes. So when our nodes deployed, we had a ton of them on the network, let's say 900 to 1,000. And we hadn't necessarily deployed any application that really utilized those node structures. They were just kind of chilling, transactional validators supporting the blockchain. And I said, and here comes COVID. And I said, is there a way we can deploy an application on Flux today or tomorrow? And can we get people that have these idle computational resources to start folding? We deployed it in a day, and we went all the way up to within the top 50 folding projects pretty much overnight. And we were amazing. Folding and mapping proteins for the COVID-19 issues. I see that on a grander scale, right? Yeah. So that's the first iteration. The next iteration is to include the GPUs and that resources and that world. But I think, yes, I do believe that there is a marketplace. And by the way, we are getting ready to launch our marketplace in Flux. So there's, teaser number 2. Our marketplace is going to be front end and back end. So whether you want to deploy a DApp and, run a server on Flux, or whether you have a front end that you want to host like a website. But there's a step beyond that, and that'll be resources. Essentially, the people will be able to allocate resources. So if I'm a college and I have medical students and we need to have the computational powers to be able to do something for a particular class, we literally go in there, we select what we want, we pay in Flux, and the next thing you know, we have access to those computational resources. So that's how I see it all going down. I think there's 3 pieces to the marketplace. I think there's the front end piece, the back end piece, and then the overall computational market resources.
That's awesome. I hope anybody listening to this who thinks, "Oh, Flux might be a cool little investment, short term or whatever," hears these things like, maybe a little bit longer term. I think about this. Uh, cool. So, another thing I wanted to chat on was, we're talking about nodes. We're talking about deploying all of the, you can deploy all this stuff, and being able to deploy something like that in like, in a day is pretty rad. So, there's the Google, there's Amazon, there's Azure. There, these big players in the cloud compute space. Like, what is some realistic thoughts about like what kind of how you want to carve out a slice of that? Like, how much of that can you carve out? Like, what's how does Flux fit into that giant picture with those monstrosities, those huge companies, corporations?
Well, I think that, as we kind of develop outwards, right? I think we're going to be an accent to legacy-based infrastructure because people are going to have to take the time to vet the process out and see whether or not it's something they want to use. It's going to happen quickly, though. And what will happen is I don't necessarily see Flux or or really any of the decentralized computational, because that's one of the questions I always get is, who's your competition? I'm like, we don't have competition. We have opportunity. We have other projects that could definitely work with us and we could capitalize on their marketplace versus ours. And there would be an integration in those pieces. That would be saying that, the internet, when it was originally phase one, so web one was static, right? Very little input. And then you move to web two, which is, rewrite, right? So now you have blogs, you have websites, MySpace, Facebook, the Googles of the world, all that other stuff, right? And now we're moving into web three, and they'll come incrementally, but everything that's been created in web two will need to be recreated in web three. It isn't a lift and shift. It's rethinking the framework of how you deliver a decentralized network. And I think that you're going to see legacy-based systems in tandem with decentralized-based systems. So what does that look like? If I have a company that is comfortable with legacy-based systems and they offer, fairly easy scaling, things like that, they're comfortable with the Googles, the Amazons, so on and so forth. But there's a component of their project or a component that they work with that they'd love to target the decentralized world. Now you can run these things completely in tandem. And, I can tell you already, we have companies that are looking at exactly that. They know Web3. They know what Web3 is going to become. And they want to be the ones that are starting to iterate very early on. And these are big projects that have lots of customers, and they know that they could see these things working in tandem. And then eventually, Andy, between me, you, and the fence post, I think Web3 eats the world in the end. Yeah. I think it could be some time from now. And I think it could be, Flux and, a handful of other projects that are all working in tandem to dethrone them. But I think they eat the world in the end. I really do. That's the plan.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. Whenever I see questions like that or thoughts like that about competition, I think that is underestimating, one, the size of the internet, and two, what Web3 is going to look like, and just how the pie is so big. There's no need to take slices away from anybody else. There's plenty of pie to go around. Uh, I think that the opportunity there is pretty massive, and there's tons of room for someone like Flux to come in and just grab some of that, that, like you're saying, side project, side tandem project, stuff like that seems like a great kind of auxiliary use case.
Yeah, and this is, we're not under NDA, so I can share this. There's been people from large projects such as AWS that have reached out to us to understand the dynamics behind the project. You'd be living under a rock not to see where we're heading in this, in this infrastructure. Now, that doesn't mean AWS is going to partner with us or anything like that, but they're starting to want to understand who their competition is. And, if we're in a baseball game, we're not even at the stadium yet in terms of being able to compete with these guys. But I think they have an initiative that they launched around decentralization. You can check it out, go to their website. There's a decentralized network that they started to build. It's not really, right? It's AWS data centers that are, they're trying to figure it out and put it together. But I think those opportunities, those weird opportunities for people like, you look at what happened with Jack and Twitter and his commitment to Bitcoin. And I think, what he's doing there is like he stepped down. Why did he step down? Is he wants to focus on this open source platform. So, I think you're going to see a real big shift in leadership. And I think you're going to see a big shift in business demands, right? So they're going to demand to have, a decentralized network. Parler, who was deplatformed by AWS, they're going to demand from their next technology vendor you promise me, as long as, we're doing the right things and there's nothing super, shady on there, that we're not going to be deplatformed. And that's where Flux shines. We can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. As someone who is slowly building an online audience and following and stuff, the idea that, YouTube could shut me down tomorrow or Twitter could, turn me off tomorrow it's a scary prospect. So that's one of the things I'm excited about Web3 and further decentralization of some of these, apps or DAPPS and sites and stuff. So you are in day 13 of the 30 and 30. I've been kind of following along with some really cool gaming, game centric ones. So one, let everybody know kind of what that is, and then maybe what have been the standouts so far, or what are you excited about? Any sneak peeks for the future ones?
Sure.
Let me know.
Yeah, I mean, the 20 and 20 was a super success, but we knew when we had to kick our game up once we launched UDP support and Compose support for Flux, we knew we were going to have to showcase it. So, I mean, some of the big winners for me are you just talked about having your YouTube platform and worrying about being deplatformed. You sync, you stream. The platforms we had Goose actually do a video recorded on Flux using a streaming application running on Flux with a chat app in the background running on Flux. It was like Inception, right?
That's
It was
super cool.
It was all happening together. And I'm sitting at the house and I'm like, that's all on Flux. Like literally everything he's doing now, he's streaming that game. Has the chat box open. He has the different pieces that he's working with, and it's all happening on Flux. And that was like my epiphany moment. Like, we made it.
Yeah. I'm about to ask if that was like one of those, it all finally kind of coming together kind of watershed moments for you.
I had a little tear right here. It went down my cheek, and I was like,
rightfully so.
I sent the guys a message and I said, do you realize right now, watching this, and I linked the link that's being streamed on Flux with gaming on Flux with the chat application on Flux. And I mean, it's like, very cool moment.
That's super rad. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of other good stuff coming up too, Andy. We're going to continue to showcase both business utility. We're gonna put some gaming. We're very involved and want to really work around blockchain based gaming, and we've actually reached out to a couple different partners that we want to work with to start to deploy game servers in a decentralized manner on Flux. So yeah, I mean, I think it's laying the foundational groundwork so people can see the potential, and that's really all it comes down to is people say, well, what can you do on Flux? Well, how about what have we done? Mm-hmm. Here's what we have done, right? Here, what are you limited to? Whatever you can do. You know what I mean? You can Dockerize it. We'll put it on Flux. Let's do it. So yeah, it's kind of exciting.
That's super rad. A slight shift here, but a question that this is I actually got asked this, and this is something I've wondered in the past too. I love Zelcore. I've said it a million times. I'll keep saying it. If I'd be bullish on Flux if that was your only product, because it's a great wallet. I recommend it to everybody. But it runs on my computer, and I save my private keys and all that stuff, and that's great. But when I think security, kind of security mindset, is there a plan in the near future, far future, one to either integrate a hardware wallet or add some other security features like Multi-Sig or some other way, or to further secure that? Because Flux, when it was 3 cents, I didn't worry about this as much, but now that it's $1 plus, it's a little bit more of a concern. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think anything you do is as good as what you put into it. Zelcore is super secure as long as you follow the steps. A very unique username, a very unique password, and your decentralized two-factor authentication enabled. That's going to be better than, I would say, 95% of what's out there, except for maybe a true hardware wallet. Because with hardware wallets, you're still kind of at the mercy of whatever their integration front end is, right? We know what it is on the blockchain, and if we have to go get it, we can get it. The answer to your question is I do believe you will see multi-sig probably pretty quickly. I would say within the next year or so, mostly because we need that multi-sig piece to eventually look at the shared node operation. So we're gonna have to figure out what that looks like. As far as hardware wallets, I would say this: best practice. You have to understand what your risk is, and you spread it accordingly. I do see us doing some level of integration with Trezor and Ledger. If you're super, super paranoid about your Flux, you can move it to a parallel chain like ETH, and you can put it on your Ledger or your Trezor today. It's basically any contract on Ethereum can be held on that particular platform. So I think you'll eventually see us get to the point where we have that integration. We haven't found the partner we want to work with yet. We haven't found that epiphany moment. I mean, we've talked to a lot of different platforms, and every single one of them was, we're the biggest, we're the baddest, we're the best. This is the way we want to be. And there wasn't an open thought bubble where we could start to, look at, okay, well, maybe if you have a software integration with a hardware backup, or maybe it's a sharded based scenario where you have a little bit in software, a little bit in hardware, and a little bit in physical, what are these things? So we want to look a little bit beyond that. So, we have ideas of what we want it to look like. We just haven't had that individual that we have found yet that can execute. I think that'll come, though. They're starting to mature pretty quickly.
Cool. Well, that's all good to hear. So with that forward thinking, I've got maybe just two last questions for you. With that forward thinking kind of mindset, where, broadly, what does the future look like? What's next for Flux? What is, the big kind of sweeps? And then, how far do y'all actually think? Do you think 5 years? Do you think 10 years? Like, how far forward do y'all actively think when it comes to the project?
Well, I've told everybody that we're Amazon year 2 at the beginning of the year, and I'd say we're Amazon year 3 or 4 now toward the end of the year, because our framework has been kind of developed. And I mean, really, that's what made Amazon great, is they weren't focused in on one particular piece. They were focused on the delivery model, the framework. So whether you were selling socks or books or a TV, it was how they delivered the framework. And that's exactly where we're at. I think that next year, and this is a very bold prediction, right? I think next year Web3 comes to the forefront. There is going to be something, a paramount moment, whether it's a massive deplatforming or, some type of censorship. And immediately everybody will realize that there needs to be another way. There has to be another way. And there is another way. And I think you're going to see Web3 really be pushed right into the forefront. And unlike, and I'm going to say this, legacy-based systems, legacy-based individuals, whether it's the financial institution or the technology sector or the healthcare sector, whatever, there is a stigma around crypto, right? When you say crypto, people tend to shy away from that in the legacy-based systems. It concerns them. Web3 is a way for them to be palatable with moving to the next iteration of technology, because it looks like something that they already know. It's not. They don't have to think of it as blockchain. They don't have to think of it as crypto. They think of it as the next internet. And I think that cadence that's going to start to be talked about, right? You're going to hear me talk about it more often, and other leaders in the space are going to talk about it as well. You're seeing it. My Twitter's inundated with stuff. And I think you're going to see Web3 be pushed to the forefront very quickly. I see lots of opportunities, especially with the recent COVID scenario. Healthcare has been looked at very deeply because it changed the paradigm of how we got care. I now go online and talk to my doctor and go up the street and get my x-rays or my blood work or you know, 2 years ago, that would have been damn near impossible. But now we're already to the point where people are starting to become more involved in their personal health care. And with that, how do I have my electronic medical records be portable and with me all the time? You know, so I think you're going to see a push in that area as well. So between Web3 and really truly the adoption cycle, the hyper cycle of adoption of Web3, electronic medical records, healthcare records, supply chain management, you name it, it's all going to come to fruition very quickly. And I think within the next year, next 2 years, I think you're really going to see the landscape change immensely.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I love to hear. I'm excited, man. That all sounds like awesome stuff. Looking forward to, yeah, this past year has, I feel like, accelerated a lot of things in the world, and now we have a whole lot of new opportunity, and I think y'all are pretty well poised for that. So to wrap up, is there any last thing you want to share with the people watching about Flux, about anything else, anything you want them to plug into or get excited about?
Yeah, I definitely want to just give a shout out to everybody in the community. And I'm not just talking the Flux community, I'm talking in the crypto community. It's a hard job being in crypto. It really is. You know, we get our butts kicked on a regular basis. One day you're on top of the world, the next day you're underneath the desk crying, you know. And the ones that stick this out and the ones that ride through this ride, the opportunity that you've been given to be here so early on in the development of the space it's unbelievable. And I thank every single one of you, even the ones that challenge us. I thank them for the opportunity to give us criticism because it makes us better in the end. And in the end, it isn't us. And once we drop our tribalism, you know, my bag is this and this is my commitment. And we stop looking at the tribalism, but we look at it as a community. That's when we win. And that's what honestly Web3 is going to give us the ability to do. All of us to participate in common goals and a common push. So I super happy with that. Thank everybody for that. A big shout out to my team and the guys that work on Flux. They have put in, I can't even begin to tell you, Andy, what that has looked like. These guys are committed through and through. They bleed blue, right? These guys, every single one of them is a value add. I mean, we have people that have left their jobs that they've been at for years and years and years, and this is their sole responsibility, is growing this to the next phase. So thank you to the team, thank you to the community, and thank you to you and to other people who are share this. This interview wasn't paid for. This interview was asked. You know, you love the project, you research the project, and you perpetuate the what we're doing in the space. And we need more people like you. We need more people that it isn't a gateway to get your project in front of people. So thank you for that. And I thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, Dan. Well, thank you for saying all that. And yeah, I'll echo all that stuff. And thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Where can people find you or follow along and all that good stuff?
Oh man, runonflux.io is our website. You can follow us online at Twitter at runonflux and at Zelcore _IO. You can join our Reddit. You know, our Discord is like the calm and civil area if you want to come in and have just a calm and civil discussion, or if you want bedlam, go to Telegram, because that's full out chaos in there. You want the Wild West, that's where you go. So and we look forward to engaging with you guys on every different level. So, you know, come check us out, runonflux.io.
Great. Well, Dan, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Stoked about Flux going forward, and hopefully have you on again in the future.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it, buddy.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video. I really enjoyed talking with Dan. Thank you, Dan, again, for taking the time to chat with me and everybody watching this video. If that got you fired up about Flux like it did me, then watch this video here to find out more information about Flux. And watch this video here to see how Flux Nodes fit into my crypto passive income strategy. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.